I'd like to call the meeting to order for March 16th, 2022 at 6:02 p.m. We're having a Zoom meeting with a hybrid at the central office. We have members of the board both in the central office and on Zoom, and we also have members of the public both in the central office and on the Zoom. And have we now figured out who operator was?
They've changed their name, so they're one of the public members of the public in the meeting now.
Thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the agenda review. We have, I don't think anything specifically to change in regards to the agenda or changing the order of anything. So I'd like to, yes?
Yep. Request in addition to the agenda, an action item to vote that the board goes back to in-person meetings.
Can we do that, Bill, right off the cuff like that?
You can definitely talk about it. I don't know if you need an action item. I think it's one of the things you can do.
Let's put it on as a topic for discussion under new business item D, in-person meetings. Does that work, Peter?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, so,
Nilda,
yes, sir.
we discussed the governance update last time. I can't remember if we decided it was this week or 2 weeks. We can give a recommendation this week if we want to. If you want to keep that on the agenda, or if we want to take it off and do it 2 weeks from now.
So, yeah, when we prepped for the meeting earlier today, we discussed that we could get your recommendation tonight and not necessarily have to take action on it tonight, so that there can be some thought put into whether or not people want to do some additional research. Does that work for you, Grant?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I did have a plan to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves, since we have at least one new board member who doesn't know us. And it's also an opportunity for everyone to sort of take a couple minutes to update each other on current state of affairs. So we don't have to have this be, really long, but we could do a chance to update, what motivated us to be on the board. So I'll start just so we can set the tone. So my name is Nilda Canella French, and I've been on one of these school boards forever. My motivation originally was that I had children in the school, and I wanted to work with the system to help shape what the education of my children looked like. That's sort of that part of the school board member where you think you're a school board member and a parent at the same time. I did manage to, I think it helped my children that I was on the school board, but I don't think it helped them tremendously more than it would any other parent who's involved in their kids' education. I have continued to stay on the board. I lost my husband to pancreatic cancer in December of 2019, and I was going to, one of the things he always asked me is, "Are you running again?" And I think he was ready for me to get off, but the fact that he ended up not being around for it motivated me to just continue doing what I know how to do. So that's why I'm still on. Al, would you like to go next?
Sure. My motivation was I stepped out of teaching, and I said there needed some representative on the board that would sometimes guide where guidance was needed. And so that motivated me to go after the position which had been left vacant. And I approached the Board of Aldermen, and they appointed me to the board, and I've been there since, now serving my last year.
Thank you, Al. We appreciate it. Nina?
Good evening, Nina Hunsaker. I've been on the board starting my 11th year this year. Motivated me to start. I was actually initially when I started out, I was a write-in. It was kind of like a last minute because I was told, yeah, there'd only be one meeting a month and, you know, not much more to that. Well, guess what? That's not true. But I have 3 kids in the system, and I think just wanting to understand the big part was the budget, because every time I went to vote for the budget, you know, you don't see what's behind that number. So a big reason was to get a more understanding of that, and also, you know, be part of the change too, and not part of, you know, the complaining, I guess. Because again, it's easy to, you know, say you don't know what to do or how to do it unless you actually get involved. So, so yeah, here I am.
Thank you. Susan.
So I'm Susan Cassidy Magnan. I'm from Fairfield. I'm an occupational therapist at the hospital, and what motivated me to get on the board was when the whole Act 46 was going through, and one of the big things with Act 46 was we were going to create equity. I had a couple of children in the school system, and when they were in high school, I realized there was all sorts of inequities. And that's what initially motivated me to join the board.
Thank you. Grant.
Grant Henderson. This is my first term on the board. Started in 2020, just before we did the pandemic lockdown. I think we had one in-person meeting before we switched over. What motivated me to join the board was, you know, being a product of, you know, the BFA system and a consumer of education, sort of lifelong. I've benefited greatly from education my whole life, and became aware of an opening and the need to fill that seat. And I thought it'd be a good chance to, you know, try to contribute back to the system that helped me so much.
Thank you. Katie.
Katie Messier. I am in my second year, first term. What motivated me, I would say, is my 3 children that I currently have at SATEC. I've been part of the educational system, you know, in one way or another my entire life. Family, that part of the educational system. So this is kind of my time to give back and kind of become more aware and in depth of what's going on in our community and our school system.
Thanks, Katie. Jack.
Good evening. My name is Jack McCarthy. I've been on the board, I believe this is my 5th year. Is that correct? I forgot to count how many. It's been so much fun. I'm a retired educator. I spent 50 years in education as a teacher, assistant principal, and got real stupid and became a superintendent. I enjoy being on the board, and it keeps my life still in education, hearing all the wonderful things kids are doing, and especially during COVID, all the wonderful things the staff and the administration are doing. I enjoy that very much. I'm also an affiliate member of the Superintendents Association, so I keep my name in there as well. And that gives me a good perspective on both the administration and the school system. So appreciate being on the board, and new things in my life. My wife just retired, so we're going to do a little traveling and so forth. But I'm looking forward to continue on the school board, and with our 2 chair and co-chair, Nilda and Nina, the double N's. They're doing a wonderful job, and I think the public will be very pleased at how we take this mission seriously. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. Peter.
Peter Deloria, I'm in the first year of my only term. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I was mayor for 12 years and realized I got pretty much nothing done, so I thought I'd try another avenue. try it on the school board, see if I can make a difference in the community. I enjoy working with intelligent people, and that's why I enjoy sitting on the school. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Is Joanne, has anyone seen Joanna?
No, but she
I
might
sent
have, she might have parent conferences.
Okay, I sent her a text. I haven't heard back. All right, and then Ryer.
So I'm Ryer Erickson, he, him. I obviously just got elected to the school board. This is my second meeting. I wanted to be on the school board because I thought I could bring a fresh perspective and offer some new ideas. So that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you. Have I missed anyone except for Joanna? Okay, we'll catch up with her in a bit. All right, next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Could you please all rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Great. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just say hi.
Oops. That was not my intention, sorry. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the visitor section. We have some folks in person in the central office and also some people online that may wish to speak. We have a visitor's preamble that I usually like to read at the beginning of this, so I'll do that. So the public comment visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to time constraints prescribed by the chair. I usually say 2 minutes per topic, and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the community, of the school community, including respecting the privacy of students and parents. Those attending remotely may type their full name in the comment section if they wish to speak. During the meeting, the comment section is going to be disabled, so you can't chat, basically. You're just going to put your name on. And then when you do speak, we'd like you to state your full name and town of residence. So you can go ahead and start listing yourself in the chat if you're interested. There are some special circumstances, so I am going to add an additional prepared statement that I want to read into the record. And that starts now. In the past 2 weeks, there have been statements made on social media that the Maple Run administration does not take sexual harassment seriously, and that members of our staff have sexually harassed students. As a board, we would like to state that we do not condone sexual harassment in any form, and we know the MRUSD administrators takes these accusations and actions very seriously. We have been apprised throughout the investigation and understand the school's attorney has advised the administration throughout the process. The administration followed all federal and state laws and regulations, including Title IX and our master agreement. We also know the administration is applying progressive discipline that can be upheld in a grievance or arbitration. Since this matter involves a student and personnel, we cannot give specific information. If you have any questions, please address them directly to Superintendent Kimball. And I want to add that if someone has evidence of sexual harassment, please bring it to the administration. So with that information, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the room with the central office that wishes to make a comment? If so, please indicate to Mr. Kimball or someone in the room. So I know you want to do that.
John Cassidy.
Okay, if you can just state your name, John, for the record, and the town of residence, and make your statement.
I'm John Cassidy, and I live in St. Albans City, and I'm here to support my daughter Georgia, who would like to make a statement to the board. And before she does, I'd just like to talk to one policy that the school board, that the district uses, which was created about 7 or 8 years ago, before the district was created, at the elementary school, because they were tired of hearing from me, and it's policy A21. And my suggestion is you take a look at that policy that prohibits school members from engaging in any public comment in this forum. And I think that's wrong. I think that the word prohibit should be taken out of the policy and changed to the word discouraged. I think if a member of the public comes in and says, I have a quick question, you should be able to answer that. And I would not allow myself, if I sat in your seat, to have that liberty taken from me. The second thing I would say is thank you. I sat on the St. Albans City School Board back in the early 90s with Nilda. I know how difficult that work is that you guys do, how laborious it is, the time it takes from your lives, so I appreciate that. And I say thank you for that. So with that,
Thanks, John.
My name is Georgia Cassidy. I'm a senior at BFA right in St. Albans, and I brought a few things with me today. This was my favorite dress. I got it over the summer, and I wore it when I took my senior pictures. And I bet if you ask my mom and my dad, they have a picture of me in that dress in their wallet. It was also the dress that I was wearing when I was sexually harassed for the first time by a staff member at BFA. It was the dress I was wearing when a staff member thought it was appropriate to lift it up. And it was the dress I was wearing when my outlook on the BFA community entirely changed. When I used to look at St. Albans, I used to look at it as a tight-knit community where everybody supported each other. Throughout this process, however, I have learned that victims of sexual harassment are not supported whatsoever by the BFA administration. When I was sexually harassed, not once, but twice, and when the whole investigation was going on, I did not hear anything from BFA admin. I had no idea what was happening. No idea whatsoever, and I was a victim. I should have known what was going on, but they didn't tell me. They didn't go out of their way to tell me, so I was left wondering and questioning. It was really scary. So when I finally did hear something, I was given 2 days notice that the staff member that sexually harassed me would be back at BFA. And I was mortified. I had 2 days to prepare myself to walk the same halls as my sexual harasser. And probably 1 or 2 protective measures were taken towards me, and a whole bunch more towards the member who sexually harassed me. When he first came back to school, I was told that I couldn't partake in my senior study hall because he was my teacher for that class, and I wasn't supposed to go in the library. We weren't supposed to cross paths. So I couldn't do my senior study hall, and I couldn't hang out with my friends in the library. Instead, I had to sit by myself in a connector by myself doing my homework as people walked by. It's not fair. So when I brought that up to the school, they allowed me to go back to the library. So now I can do my senior study hall, and I'm thankful for that. But for example, today in journalism class, we were talking about going to check out books. Since I'm not supposed to go to the library, if an instance like that occurs, I have to email the assistant principal, Ms. Katam. She can go find a book for me and bring it to me when it's convenient to her. because I'm not supposed to go to the library, because the burden is placed on me, even though I was a victim of sexual harassment. My question is, what happened to zero tolerance? What happened, what professional doesn't understand sexual harassment and understand that it's not okay? Why do we give people second chances? And why do we expect that other victims are gonna come forward after knowing what this whole entire process has been like? Because I know if I was somebody who was sexually harassed, I would be discouraged. I would be discouraged by coming forward. Because the way the school board, the school district has handled this is absolutely absurd and disgusting. So I really want the school to think twice about keeping an employee who is a sexual harasser, which has been proven in an investigation in a violation of Title IX. Thank you.
I've got a few kind of additional comments. And to George's point about the lack of support, I would say the silence has been deafening.
Mm-hmm.
She's gone back to school. Teachers aren't allowed to talk to her about it. The administration doesn't seem really engaged in talking to her about it. She's left to her own devices. It doesn't, she met with a guidance counselor today. It wasn't spoken about. It's clear that either there's been tacit or direct communication with the staff to say, don't talk about this. It leaves the victim all by herself. It's wrong. She found out today that the Social Justice Club was told that they couldn't be involved in protesting sexual harassment at the FA. How does that happen? How does that happen? I would say, to George's point, inaction in the presence of violence, discrimination, inequity, sexual harassment is complicity. And from George's point, I know to Nilda's point earlier, Nilda's stuff's gone on in the background, there's been conversations, we've talked, I understand all that. Georgia doesn't see any of that. So from her standpoint, from a student standpoint, it's just dead silent. What is she left to believe? What are we modeling to our students? That it's okay to be quiet in the face of inequity? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. If this had been something slightly different, maybe the same thing, and it involved students at an athletic event, there would be immediate consequences to the students at that event. They'd be dragged out of the stands and said, that's not okay. If it was a visitor, a parent, a community member, the same thing would happen. If it was an administrator that's not part of the collective bargaining, and it happened twice, not once, but twice, it happened twice, you'd be terminated. The only difference is that this is somebody that's protected by the union. That's the only difference. It's got to end. We've got to do better. I'd like three things. I'd like an apology. I'd like an apology from the perpetrator, and I'd like an apology from the school for not doing what they're supposed to do, which is protect their students. And this isn't about Georgia, it's about our community. What are we saying to the community? I'd ask for a second thing. I'd ask the administration, the district, to figure out in the future how the school can come around the victim and support them. Because of the collective bargaining unit, that's an impossibility right now. The school community can't talk to George at all because either, as I said, tacitly or otherwise, there's no communication about it. We can't talk about this. We all know what's going on in Ukraine is genocide, right? Nobody wants to say that. That's genocide. And the only reason that we don't step in and deal with it is the threat of nuclear war. That's the threat. That's the threat by the union, right? I'd like us to put a stake in the ground and say, you know what? Racial injustice is not okay. There's the stake in the ground. Violence in school, there's the stake in the ground. It's not okay. And sexual harassment in school, there's a stake in the ground, and it's not okay. And we're going to fight for that. And that doesn't matter what the attorneys say. It doesn't matter what the union says. It is there's zero tolerance. We just got to stop it. It's the right thing to do. We have a moral obligation to do that, because otherwise, all we're doing is walking the walk. They're talking the talk. We're not walking the walk at all. We're just saying let's do something about racial justice. But then the kids in the background get beat up or whatever, and that's fine. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Georgia. Any other folks in the room have anything to say about that topic or any other topic?
I'd like to. My name is Martin Magnan. I'm from Fairfield. I wish I could speak as well as Georgia and John, but I can't believe that in this day and age that Georgia would go through that and we can't support her. We can't do better than this. And yet she has to avoid the individual who harassed her, and there's no consequence. What are we telling the other girls that something like this might happen to? And what are we telling the boys that might have that inclination? Get a job at BFA, because the place is full of kids that you can do whatever you want. Even if you get caught, nothing happens. It's not the way that any of our daughters should be treated.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Martin. Anyone else in the room wish to comment? Anyone remote wish to comment?
John, the two of those folks on there, Elio and Brett, they're on the agenda for time to speak. Yeah, unless Elio has something else they want to speak about. So I know that we have two students who have identified themselves for comment, but I believe they may actually be the students who are on the agenda for an official item, so I'm not sure if they have something in addition to that official item they want to comment on. And Brett has also mentioned, Brett Blanchard, that he wants to introduce two students to speak,
I think that's
which I believe is the agenda.
Yeah, Rowan should be part of that.
So the students, are you here for the reports to the board related to the flags and also student representation, or do you have other topics?
That is what I'm here for.
Okay. And Rowan, were you here for that too?
No, I have a different topic.
Rowan, you're here for this for the student representation to the school board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, so you guys are already handled on the agenda a little bit later. I just want to give you an opportunity if you had anything not related to the agenda that you needed to speak about. All right, so are you talking?
You said we're on the agenda for later.
Yeah, a little bit later, not too far.
Okay, that's we can wait till then.
Okay, perfect. So anyone else wishing to speak? I think we've covered everyone unless someone needs to correct me. All right. Okay, we're gonna move on then on the agenda, and people are welcome to stay, or if they've said what they need to say and need to leave, that's all right also.
Nilda? Yes. I was wondering if we could just have a quick, just like 5-minute intermission or break or something. If that's okay.
Can you say it again? I didn't catch.
Could we just have like a 5-minute break?
You want to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody good with taking a 5-minute break?
5 minutes. I'm on board with the break. Thank you.
What's that?
Yes to a break.
Yes to a break. Okay, I guess we're taking a break for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
The recording should be stopped. Please stop the recording. I think I'm going to start again unless there's an objection. All right. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Feels a little awkward. I'm not quite sure what's going on in the room, but whatever, we'll keep going. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, the minutes for several meetings and then the media packet. Anyone wish to pull anything out from the consent agenda to discuss individually?
The boardroom unmute, please.
Sorry, no, that was my fault.
Okay. So does anyone want to pull anything out of the consent agenda to discuss individually? Hearing none, I'm going to request a motion to
So moved.
approve the consent agenda. Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
I'll
Thanks,
second.
Jack. Okay, I'm going to do a roll. Al,
Yeah.
Nina,
Yes.
Pryor,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
and Nilda. Consent agenda approved. Continuing on, we have the reports to the board. The first item on the agenda is the discussion as to whether or not we want to talk about flags at the school. Is there someone that's there tonight that's ready to discuss that topic?
I'm here to discuss that topic.
Okay, so if you can just introduce yourself and then let us start your discussion.
All right. Good evening. My name is Elio Haig, and I am here on behalf of the Social Justice Club at Bellows Free Academy, St. Albans. The Social Justice Club was started in the fall of 2020 at BFA, and since then we have been petitioning and gathering action to raise the Black Lives Matter flag at BFA. So that is what we are appealing to the board today, or we are requesting that we be permitted to do so. So I would like to just take a couple of minutes to explain why we would like this opportunity, why it is important to our community, and different situational aspects that go along with that. So to begin, as a student of BFA, I can attest to the fact that the culture of bigotry here at the high school is rather intense. It has been intensifying, especially during this year. We're seeing more and more accounts of racism, homophobia, transphobia, and this was commented on a recent article in the BFA Mercury by Joseph Ward, titled An Analysis of the Culture of Bigotry at BFA. The article quotes, "The Mercury put out an anonymous survey to students to investigate BFA's culture around the issue of bigotry. Of the 42 respondents, 22 said that they felt there was either a slight or great increase in bigotry since they began attending BFA. According to one response, there has been a large shift in the culture of bigotry at BFA. When I was a freshman, bigotry was a present issue that impacted my life from time to time, but it was not nearly as severe then as it is now. So you can see from that example that some students are feeling as if racism and other issues are becoming increasingly prevalent in our school. And that's why it is important for us to take a symbolic stand with minority communities, such as the Black community, and against white supremacy. And the Social Justice Club feels that raising the Black Lives Matter flag is an avenue to do so. I realize that there are concerns about what the Black Lives Matter flag stands for, and some have a misconception of what it means. Thinking back to the protests in the summer of 2020, there was a lot of fear, a lot of anger, and a lot of misinformation. But what we want to stress is that first of all, this institution is not harmful. It is not a terrorist group or anything like that, but this flag isn't necessarily supporting the institution. It stands for the Black community and it stands against racism. And it's not only a celebration of Black culture and Black people, which is important to celebrate in this day and age, but it's also a symbol that condemns white supremacy, which is a symbol that the Maple Run Unified School District must embrace if we are to be a truly anti-racist institution, which I believe is a goal that we have. Let me see. Here I have some data that we collected in a petition from last spring. We sent out a petition and to get a feel of how people at BFA feel about raising the Black Lives Matter flag. And we had 381 responses, most from students, some from prospective students and teachers, and also from parents. And 78% of all respondents said that yes, they would like to have the Black Lives Matter flag raised at Bellows Free Academy, St. Albans. There was some discontent with 19.9% of people saying no, and then another smaller margin of people who wanted more information, which Social Justice Club has taken steps to provide. We have put out bathroom bulletins each month that give more information on anti-racism and such, so that we can inform the community on what exactly we're entailing here. And so the Social Justice Club does recognize that there could be some discontent surrounding this issue. So we want to assert that any discontent should be handled accordingly, and that we recognize that some of this discontent could land on Black students and students of color, which do not make up the majority of Social Justice Club, but we want to say that we stand with them and that we will protect and support. So I just want to bring up quickly, how am I doing on time?
You're fine, you're fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just want to mention another school that has raised the Black Lives Matter flag in Vermont. That is a high school in Montpelier, where the percentage of Black students is just 5%. But the administration there asserts that is still important despite the lack of Black students to have representation there. So Principal Mike Mccarthy quoted, "We are committed to improvement in this dialogue and to work for equity and racial justice in our school system." And we believe as a club that that is something our administration needs to strive for. So as I will close by saying that we would like to raise this flag not just as an isolated action to show our support, but also open a door to open conversations about race and anti-racism in our community, which is incredibly important and something that should be happening in this rural community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Elio. Appreciate your presentation. We can open it up for some discussion, school board.
I have a question, comment. Two things,
Wait,
actually.
sorry, is there a motion? Like, is that the idea?
Well,
It's not down for an action.
it's not here for action at this point tonight. So it's sort of a presentation. We have Elio here.
Okay.
So if there's some questions or clarification.
If it was an action, I was going to say we should make the motion first.
Correct. So I'm just trying to promote a little discussion.
Perfect.
Peter, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was. Two questions. So I was one of the ones that was kind of, oh, I don't know. So I decided today to bring it to my children, and I kind of said to them, how do you feel about, raising a Black Lives Matters flag at your school? And my 9-year-old looked at me and said, I think it'd be great, Mom. And I said, you do? Can you tell me why? Like, what does it stand for? And she said, because I think everyone deserves to be equal. And so for me, it was kind of like, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to be like, it doesn't really, I need to listen to my kids. So I thought it was really cool that my 9-year-old was like, yeah, let's do it. So I thought that was really cool. And on the other spectrum, or not so much, if this does happen and this flag does get raised, are we going to understand that this is going to bring other people or other clubs wanting to come and raise their flags, and is that something that we're going to be able to raise as well? Do we switch flags out? Like, are we going to be able to raise an LGBTQ flag one day? Are we going to, like, I'm just wondering what that's going to look like, I guess.
Yeah, good question. Anyone else?
So, in looking at this policy from Washington Central United, I feel like this kind of explains all of it. And then I had the same question about what about other clubs and how long do they, we can't necessarily have a flagpole that has flags all the way to the ground.
Right.
But this clearly says the board made by, the flag shall remain on the school flagpole through the end of the year and shall then be removed unless the board elects a different timing.
Right, that's what I was.
Which certainly could happen if, we have several other clubs that come forward, and I like the idea that it is coming from a club at one of the schools versus an outside group. So I am certainly in favor of adopting some sort of policy so that we could raise not only the Black Lives Matter flags, but potentially other flags as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things that we could do at the end of this discussion is direct our superintendent to bring us back a policy similar to the Washington Unified Union School District policy that is BFA specific. And I think one of the good things in that policy is that the board makes the ultimate decision in each and every case. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, with the Washington Unified policy, I think the idea is that you, whichever school brings the request, you decide to fly the flag at that school. Would that be the intent here, or would it be a district wide? If one school does it, they all do it, maybe the complex as well?
Oh, good question. I don't know how it would play out from campus to campus. Bill, do you have any comment on that?
That's a good question. So a couple of things as background. This is a policy that I can actually say I wrote because there was no draft policy and I was the superintendent at the time. So that was something that the board really wanted to do. This happened in 2000, even though it says 2021, that's when they merged. So it was done from 2018. 17 was when it went into effect. This policy affected U32, their high school, but now I know it affects all their schools, and they fly the flags at all their schools across all 7 campuses.
So that's how that works. I think it's up to you as a board to say, do you want to do it school specific? I could talk to the leadership team. I have not talked to the leadership team about it. I can get you some input by the next board meeting from where the leadership team stands. I know there is support across schools from the general conversations I've had. So I don't think that's it. I mean, it's just how you want to implement it.
My question would be then to Elio, the BFA, Elio, am I pronouncing? Elio, sorry, Elio, I'm sorry. Would be what, because that's actually a question I had, is why is it only BFA you're suggesting? And the other question to you, and or maybe to your club, since I don't want you to necessarily have to answer on their behalf if you don't know, what is the time frame you see the flag flying?
So for the first question, since our social justice club is concentrated to Fellows Free Academy, we were more focused on getting the flag raised just there. But of course, we'd certainly be open to the thought of having all schools in Maple Run have the Black Lives Matter flag raised at their school. As for the second question, can you repeat the question, please?
Sorry, so I know like other districts have done it where they've done it for so long and it's a symbolic time frame based on maybe how long slavery existed in the United States or various other time frames. What is the time frame that you are suggesting or maybe looking for to have the flag flying?
Our club has not talked about that in depth. I know some people have said indefinitely as a way of support, but I realize how administration would see that as not an option. So we are open to negotiating that as a club and having a more in-depth conversation about exactly how long and other specifics such as that.
Thank you.
Ryder, I just give you some information. It's just information I know from being a superintendent and my colleagues. There are schools that it goes all year round.
Right, yeah.
And there are schools, I think the least I've now ever heard is during the month of January with the recognition of January's, February, sorry. Thank you for correcting me. For February for Black History Month.
I mean, could we also figure if there's other clubs or whatever,
yeah.
Let's say there's 4, do we say, okay, let's split that time, like how, you know, I think I think everybody deserves
Can I ask one more question of Elio? Are there other flags that you would see wanting to, so for instance, I know like the Progress flag, the Progress Pride flag is a flag that has elements of both racial diversity and sexual identity diversity. Are there other flags that you all have talked about flying as well, or maybe in, like, as opposed to the BLM flag?
We have talked about a few different options, although I do want to clarify that this this raising the flag issue isn't necessarily a club thing. I want to clear that up. It's more of a school-wide like acceptance social justice thing. It's not just like our club is putting up a flag. It's our school is putting up a flag. But beyond that, we have not talked about raising flags such as the LGBTQ plus flag, although I would appreciate that as the queer person, but we have not talked about that, but once again, we can have a more in-depth conversation. I would love to have, and I'm sure the rest of the club would love to have people from administration come in and talk to us more about things like this, because I don't have all the answers to this. I was briefed about this meeting today, so I don't really have all that information, but I would love to continue to have these conversations when I do have more information.
Nilla and board, I would, first of all, I'm in favor of putting the flag up, but I'm also in favor of limiting it to 1 or 2 months. And also, just playing off a little bit what we just heard our guests say, if we're having racial issues in the school, I don't think the Black Lives flag will solve those issues, and it seems like a petty response to them. We just had Mr. Cassidy say that he feels that lines should be drawn, and possibly we should. If these issues are truly happening in our schools, they need to be handled more than putting a flag on the pole. We need to run some kids at the pole or do something, but we need to stop this. And I'm not sure how. The other idea is, like I said, a limit of 1 or 2 months. And I'm not sure which 1 or 2 months, but there are other groups out there and other worthy causes, I believe. And I think that limit, and if the superintendent wrote this up, then I'm sure he can write another one up as well. And I guess that's the only thing that scares me on this, is that it's run it up and it kind of stays up this year unless something takes it down. And I guess I'm not feeling good about that. I like to see us set up a 1 or 2 month process and then invite other people to fly their flags as well. Social injustice is social injustice under any color, and I think we need to attack it all. Thank you.
So, can I add a couple of things, Nelda?
Yep.
So 2 things. I actually don't necessarily agree with what you said, Peter, from the standpoint of, I don't necessarily believe that it needs to be just 1 or 2 months, especially if there aren't any other flags being flown. I do think that, especially looking at this, at kind of this policy, that flag must, originate from a student group. I often think that there might be different issues that, and again, we just have K through 8. It's not like we've got a grade school and a middle school necessarily, where we'd have different flags. But I feel like at each of the schools, we need to allow some measure of those, if there's students in a particular school that have strong feelings about something, whether it be, Cheerios or, I'm just trying to think of something, that we wouldn't necessarily think of, or the Black Lives Matter movement flag, that the flags that are flown should be coming from those schools. Again, we don't have a policy. These are kind of all ideas that we need to think about as we create a policy.
So Nilda, I'd be glad to take that task, bring it. We have a process for policy adoption, and that if I bring it to the next meeting and warn it, doesn't mean it can't be changed, but it starts you down that path of policy adoption. And then people can think about it, and they'll have time to, we're at this first discussion, and you might see something and say, hey, here's a better idea. And you can
I think that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Grant?
If we go down that road, would we be able to pass or adopt a policy in time to raise the flag this year?
Yes, you have the way you normally adopt policy, you actually have the power to adopt policy in one meeting, but because you don't have a policy on how you adopt policies, but the way we normal practice, sorry to get so technical. The normal practice is that you read it at one meeting, and then it gets posted for public comment, and those comments come back to you in the second meeting, and you can adopt it there. So you could be, by the end of April, you could be done.
Yep. Yes, Jack.
So, two comments. I thought Elio, your presentation was superb. It's not easy for young people to come before a school board at a public meeting that's being filmed and so forth, and speak so eloquently. I appreciate what you've done here. The other comment is, as you said, it's important for the students of color, but I would add that it's also important for all students, because it's an issue that all of us need to be thinking about. And I don't think we can say there's going to be 5, 6 other clubs. This is an important issue that affected our entire nation. It's a big issue. It's not a small thing that we're going to have a multitude of clubs and issues. This is a big deal. And I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Jack, I want to throw a stone at you because I was about to do just what you just did. Very impressed with the presentation that this young lady just did, and very impressed with the way she was able to handle herself calmly and directly to the board's question. So kudos to you, young lady.
And thank you.
Can I ask actually, do we need to have the policy in place to fly the flag? So in other words, can we do two things concurrently next meeting and that we can adopt or start the process of doing that, of doing a policy for this flag thing, and at the same time say, because we're getting close to the end of the year.
I'm gonna bring in 2017 knowledge prior on this, okay? And so we have moved a lot as a nation from 2017 to 2022 in some places and not much in others. Going through this when I did, there wasn't a policy anywhere I could find in the United States at that point. And our attorney, who's the same attorney that serves this district, said, I want to protect the board from going down a road without a policy to give them the direction. Because if you do something before that, then you get into the place of, wait a minute, we got to get into this potential, it's a small potential, but potential of suit of you didn't declare how you were doing things, so therefore I get to put my flag on that pole. I'm giving you the short summary of it. And so I want to see it, I'm in total favor of the proposal, I have been for a while, but it's also having the board to have the power in writing to say, yeah, this is our decision. It's not someone else's decision, it's our decision. And we set a process that's there in our policy or directed that a process was developed. And so then we go forward. And then one of the things that was years ago, and this has changed, and I'm going back to like 2000, is we had a bus driver who wanted to fly a POW flag. And the ACLU came and said, if you let that done, then you gotta let any other flag on that bus. Because there was no policy or procedure. So I'm trying to make this right, and I know it takes a little long, and I agree, I want it up there, but I want to make sure that we're in a good place for the organization.
Thanks for that update. Okay, so we have a plan for next meeting that you're going to bring a draft and we can list it as a first reading and either choose to like it as a first reading or send it back depending on what all people feel like. Elio, thank you again for addressing us with that. You did a great job. Anything else you need to say related to that topic?
Not at the moment, no. Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to next item on the agenda, which is also a student presentation. And I think Mr. Blanchard's here for some of that, and maybe Rowan is here. She's going to talk about student representation to the board. So Brett, is it you first or Rowan second, or how you doing this?
I'm just going to introduce the students and then they'll speak briefly on what it is. So just really quickly, there's 5 students that I meet with every other week, and they've really formed a student advisory committee because Drew and Rowan met with me about having a higher student voice, more meaningful student voice this year. So one of the things that we decided to do was get together a small committee, freshman, sophomore, and 3 juniors, in this case, Leah Fitzgerald, Seth Richards, Drew, Rowan, and Dior Brennis. And Seth and Dior have practiced tonight, so they couldn't come. But they would like to, in this case, Seth has done a lot of research on having a later start time for the high schools and why that's beneficial. But tonight, Drew and Rowan are here just to introduce a topic that they think happens to be very important, and I'll let them speak. Either one, either Rowan or Drew, take it away.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rowan Morgan. I'm a junior at PFA, and Drew and I have been meeting with Mr. Blanchard to work on creating a meaningful student voice for Maple Run, as he said. And we were hoping the board would.
Can you hold on just a sec? Can we do anything about this
formally
delayed
present our
thing?
ideas at the April 6th meeting?
Hang on just a sec. Can we do anything about this delayed speech thing that's happening?
I don't know, Rowan, can you turn off your camera and just talk and see if that's any better? That helps your internet? Try it.
Okay, try talking again, Rowan.
Is this better?
Much better.
Do you want me to repeat what I said?
I think we got it. I think we got it from you, Rowan, so go ahead and just go on from where you were.
Keep going.
Okay, I think I can turn it over to Drew at this point, just so we can both have a chance to speak.
Hi, I'm Drew Dukalon. I'm a junior at BFA. Me and Rowan started this thought in one of our classes. We took a sociology of crime class, and then we brought the idea to Mr. Blanchard. Like she said, we've been meeting for a couple of weeks, and we're hoping to try and get some student voice on the school board. We're hoping to come to a couple, like maybe a meeting monthly, something like that. We just want kids to have more of a voice and like be a part of the decision, sort of, or give our perspective more. And we're hoping to present the idea next month.
Thank you. I mean, I'm all for it. When we were on the BFA board, we had a couple of student representatives come on a regular basis that were in the high school, and they became very active members of the board and had a lot to offer. What would be the procedure, Bill, to make it happen?
I'd have to look into that, Nilda, because it's been a little while since I've had to actually start one. With a board, with a student rep, there is statute supports having a student representative. They are asked to be out of a couple of types of conversation, and I don't have the statute in front of me. I'm sorry I didn't bring it tonight. I know Drew and Rowan, because I met with them and Brett about a month ago. They've got a really exciting idea that I hope for them to present next meeting to you here in April, that the 5 students have put together of how to bring representation from all schools to the board and to work on that together. So I don't think there is like I said, it's allowable in Vermont statute. I think the board would have to approve it, that they want to have positions, and I'm not going to talk any more about structure because I think they have a structure they should propose, and they've done a lot of good legwork from what they told me. So,
Yeah, and it seems like recently we had.
Sounds good. How's the board feel about that, proceeding with getting some of that information?
I'll say Nilda.
What did you say? Al, did you say something?
Yeah, I said that going back to the times that we had them on the board, they offered an awful lot.
Right. I do recall there were some rules around it. I don't recall the rules, but there are certain conversations.
Major rule was they could make presentations, they could make recommendations, they even could make motions. They just couldn't vote on them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if there's no objection on the board, I'd like to proceed with getting that information put together and hearing about it at the next meeting. Does that work for everyone, Grant?
Yeah, it's sort of the same comment I had on the flags. Is this BFA only, or do we want input from the other schools?
Right.
I'm just going to say the students have figured this out, Grant. I know it's I'm not going to say any more because they've done such a good job. Let's hear their proposal. They weren't ready to come tonight to give the full proposal. I asked them just to come and talk to you for a few minutes, and they've been here for 1 hour and 10. So first of all, Rowan and Drew, I apologize. I said we'd do it quickly. And I'm sorry about that, but I thought it was good for all of you to be prepped for the next meeting, because they've been doing some good work to answer your questions, and I didn't want to get into a back and forth, because it's not fair to them when I twisted their arm at about 12 today through Brett.
Okay, well, okay, so let's proceed. And oh, by the way, great job on the hockey team. I think that,
Thank you.
I think maybe you're both on the team, right? I'm just
Yeah.
guessing, but I kind of deduced that. So thank you for sticking around for all of this to give your presentation. And we're going to move on the agenda so you guys can stick around, or you can exit, whatever your choice is.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, guys.
Next item is the district liaison officer report. We have a couple of attachments, and Bill's going to review those with us and give us his report.
Yes, so we, as it was set by the board for when we moved to a district liaison officer, there's a reporting period November and March. So this report includes the instances from November 1st till March 9th, I believe. I said that in here. We had a total of 64 instances, but 36 were attached to a student. A lot of the other ones are like alarms, parking, traffic violations that are out off our campus but might be involved. We had a time where some cars went past a bus a couple times with red lights on, so the district liaison gets involved in that. So that's why, and I kind of tried to do a summary at the bottom of the report on the data of those types of instances. I made it 3 categories. Public speaking, we've had, and I might ask Leanne if you have more questions on this, but one of our instructor for public safety has been out on leave. And so it's actually been great that our DLO has been able to come in and provide content for our program that we have that's a fire police learning opportunity in Northwest Technical Center. There you can see the traffic parking violations. Parking is a big thing, as we all know, here in the city, and really, really important. And then alarms. Security or fire alarms. And then on the back of that page, there are 36 instances that were attached to a specific student, so I tried to break them out by call type. I will tell you that I am somewhat going against Vermont's procedure, or it's not a policy, but it's a procedure for data regarding. We're not supposed to reveal anything that has a count of less than 10 on students to try to keep it unidentifiable. I took the latter half of that saying, I think it's unidentifiable the way I presented it here. You couldn't connect it back to a student. I did the best I could with what I could do with the data we had. I can't say the data is perfect. We're still figuring out the system from what we told you last November. As I said, we made our own, there's this St. Albans police log that gives me the 64, and then we have the last sheet that I gave you is a paper copy of what we have electronic in Power School. It's how we're logging the district liaison officer work and all of the, and the reason I did that is as I said in the beginning of the memo, I look at this as process improvement as we go. So I think we're giving you more than we did in November, but that we're going to give you, you're going to give me some feedback as you did in November about this report and say, hey, we'd like a little bit more. Or a little bit less, or we'd like it a different way. So that's what I can, that's the spirit of the report. I know that you can all read it, so I'm not trying to go through it every little piece. Thank you, Nilla. I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Bill related to the report that you received in your packet? There's several attachments.
I do. So one of the things here is the average response time, which is 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And if I were to call the police at my house and it took them 22 minutes to get there, that'd be pretty bad. So my question is why is that 22 minutes?
So
we're paying extra to have these 2 officers on retainer, basically. And I just don't understand why it's 22 minutes.
So we're down to 1 officer right
One
now.
officer, okay.
The 22 minutes is, that depends on if it's something we need them right away. Or an example is when we have a weapon, we need them to come and pick up the weapon, or drug paraphernalia. So I can give you the average of it. I'd have to, you may say, hey, tell me which ones of those call types you need right away.
Yeah,
and are you getting the response? I did not do that right here. I can do that. It's just, it's part of our process improvement of what.
Gotcha.
We saw that as a leadership team. We reviewed this last week, because I tried to go with the leadership team before I got there. And we're all like, oh, that 22 minutes doesn't tell the story.
Gotcha, okay, that's good, because that was a lot.
I can tell you I needed Officer Tally today, for an instance.
Mhm.
I had him in a minute on the phone.
Okay.
Is there a way you can break that out? Because again, one of the big concerns when we went to the district liaison officer was that, you know, if there was a shooting incident, people weren't gonna be there.
Yeah.
And so is there a way that you can kind of do like emergency incidents
So
versus?
here's our qualitative analysis, just what I just said. If we need them, we get them right away. I mean, they're a couple minutes. Probably the furthest is Fairfield, and you needed them last week at one point.
Yeah, and he texted me right away.
Yeah, it's like, right, how fast, you know, how fast am I coming out? 36, which is a 10, 12 minute drive from here at a normal speed limit. So that's our furthest response rate. I could do that analysis. Here's the thing that I can tell you. The amount of time to do this data capturing right now is putting a huge burden on our staff.
Is this a public document?
Is this about what I gave you? Yes.
Yeah, so I guess that it kind of brings back that concern that, you know, again, for people that were really concerned about not having SROs in the school to see that, well, listen, now it's 22 minutes. And so we had all these 36 emergencies and it took them 22 minutes on average.
Yeah.
I know it's a resource, you know, in terms of it takes resources to pull that out, but I guess if it's a public document, I guess I'd like to know that, you know, in real emergency situations, the average response time is, you know, 3 minutes, unless we're in Fairfield. Unless they're really good drivers, that's what I want to follow. Or the bad drivers.
So, like I said, if the will of the board is to do that, we could, but I'll also tell you, I'm not hearing anything from any of my administrators saying there's a response time problem.
So maybe it'd be more helpful if you could just say, this is, like there were so many incidents where it was a response time problem, and this is how long it was.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, that's. Also, can I ask a question as well about the BFA number?
Yeah.
That number seems lower compared to, for instance, the two elementary schools in St. Albans. Is that because of the safety guy, safety dude? Sorry, that's the title.
Safety person. I just think it was William.
Okay, fair.
And he's, I can't answer that for you, Laura. I'd have to ask the BFA administrators what they think of that. And I think that one of the things we also, we saw how many instances there were when we kind of looked at it all together, we hadn't been watching it through time. I was like, that seems a lot lower than what our history has been. And that's just intuition. It's not even, I can't even say it's qualitative data. That's just where we looked at it.
It'd be nice to know that from a standpoint, I know it's resources, but in the standpoint of, you know, is it really lower and why is that?
Well, this is the first time we're tracking it, so
Yeah.
we'll get that.
Yeah, because we can't compare it to before.
We can't compare it to before, yeah.
Okay, I think Grant has a question.
2 comments. The first is, as a potential improvement to the report, could we start including some trending? Just like a chart that, because the next one will be, I think, our 3rd one, and so you could have 3 data points. And the second, I guess, actually is a question. Does our agreement with the police liaison include any kind of reporting on their end?
Yes, it includes the logs they give us monthly.
Okay, but it's just the logs. They don't provide a summary report, or they're not supposed to?
They just provide their logs, which is actually great, because being the data person that I like to look at it, it's like, I like to see the detail of it and then aggregate it up ourselves. I think it's actually really fruitful. I've got all those reports, and they keep a lot of notes. They just use their regular police logs, and they do a great job of. We're able to kind of cross it over to where I was able to make sure we had the same numbers pretty easily. Took about an hour.
That was all, thanks.
I would just say that I'm extremely concerned about school threat 1 threat and intimidation 3, and weapon possession 2, because it only takes one time for us to have a catastrophe, and I'm concerned that we have any at all. And if it is, that we have someone there on time to handle it. I mean, we've had this discussion prior and made decisions prior, but again, safety was always the issue, and it looks like it is still.
That's why it'd be interesting, and
So-
we can't necessarily do a side-by-side to know how
You
many.
can't, but I would say, the first thing I would say is the weapon is, if it were a firearm, as I said in the cover, you would know about as a board, because there'd be a special meeting by statute. So that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
Any of those. I would want to talk to my leadership team about what they perceive that data number versus their memory of history.
Okay.
For me personally, I've only been here for 3 years. That's not abnormal.
Those are not abnormal
Those
numbers.
are the abnormal numbers.
And I definitely take your word for it, and I just
But I want to
look
check.
at places where catastrophes just happen and want to make sure it doesn't happen here.
I agree. I don't want any catastrophes.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. Anyone else?
I just have one more question about process here. So I know that now the city has 2 embedded crisis workers.
Yeah.
Or they have one and they
Yeah.
approved another.
They're approved, they're getting there,
Yeah, are those, if there are like, so instance, for instance, the mental health or
Yeah.
crisis, would there be the potential for those 2 individuals or one of those 2 individuals?
I can do one better for you, right?
Yeah.
They have.
They have, oh, perfect, great.
Have you seen those?
Yep, that was a embedded crisis
We
worker.
can't get NCSS, they're NCSS employees, so
Yeah.
they're coming that way, but
Right.
we can't get the NCSS crisis team.
Great, thank you.
And they're extremely helpful.
Great, that's good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions related to District Liaison Officer report? Thank you. Have you gotten enough feedback for improvements for a future report?
I had 2 things: track essential issues, response time, and then data points from previous reports is what I got from Grant. Grant, you were a little garbled, so if I didn't get that right, that's what I got from you.
Yeah, that's right. And if you want to follow up after, if you have any questions about that, I can just a quick, just a simple scatter plot.
Yeah, could we also, it cannot be done in a spreadsheet though, so then we can see month after month, just not just the plots. Actually have the data right there too in the tabs.
Let me think about that, Nina. Let me think about that. I'm not sure your timing is right, but we can get you some sort of.
Well, it doesn't have to be. It's just part of the improvements. I'd like to see more of a standardized report. I know these are not easy to put together, but maybe we can kind of start, if you need some help with that too, I can do that too.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you all for your input. Next item on the agenda is the governance update. So I think there might have been a little bit of confusion about this. We talked about the fact that we were going to look at some of the information and perhaps Grant was going to bring up some of the pros and cons of the different types, and then we were going to digest it and take a recommendation tonight, but not action tonight, action at the next meeting to determine which of the options in governance we want to adopt, if any. So Grant, I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation.
Sure. Okay. So no slides tonight. I'll just do a quick review of what we've talked about the past couple times, and I can quickly give the committee's recommendation. We narrowed it down. We narrowed down governance to 2 sort of main options: results-based and policy governance. We talked about results-based, I want to say back in January, and results-based has there's really like 5 kind of main aspects of it. 3 of them are sort of important differentiators. And those are the results-based focuses on vision, mission, goals, and adopting frameworks for measuring performance, and also reviewing practices to ensure the board is focused on the right things. So practically speaking, that's how we would implement the results-based. The policy governance is the one that we showed last time, which has, I don't know, a couple dozen individual policies, and you adopt it as a package. And the only one that the board really has any real control over is the end statement, which can be as simple, it could be as simple as something that looks like a mission statement, or it could be, a little bit more focused, maybe to the point where it looks like SMART goals, but probably not, probably more like, mini policies is what they might look like. So any questions on the two types of governance before I go into the recommendation? Nothing. Okay, good. So the recommendation from the committee, and Nina, Jack, speak up if I get this wrong, but we feel that our board is better geared towards results-based. It will allow the in-depth discussion and the exchange of data that I think we've been wanting for, or we've been expressing a need for, and we've been receiving, for the record. So thanks, Bill and Edmund and all of the organization for going along with us on that. And it will also give us that feedback loop, right? Because that's the way that the results-based work is we get the report, and we have a framework for providing feedback on the results. And interestingly, that framework for measuring the performance and the workflows for measuring performance, policy governance does that really well. So what our recommendation is to have a results-based governance model, but using the workflows from the policy governance. And that's what I showed last week with there's a cycle where we set the policies and the objectives, and then that goes to the administration for interpretation and implementation and execution. And then it comes back to us for a review where we receive the report, we acknowledge that we've received the report, and we accept it and provide feedback. In much the same way that we just did for the SRO report, but we would sort of formalize that process for a multitude of goals and objectives, which would be determined by a committee that we've been talking about. That's how we would interact with the organization. And then within our own, within our board and how we monitor our performance, we would have a similar feedback loop, but we wouldn't rely on Bill and Maple Run for the execution of that, because we'd be doing it ourselves. So, but it would still be a formal process where we sort of self-audit. Nina and Jack, did I miss anything?
No, that was good, Grant.
Okay.
Oh, I was muted. Good job.
Okay, good. Are there any questions on that? I believe we're going to do a thought exchange at some point with the board now that we have a recommendation. And I encourage everybody on the board, if they haven't already, to look at the resources link in our meeting site, and also check out the Winooski School District policy governance.
Now, is it your recommendation that we do the thought exchange before we take action?
I think that makes sense. And probably have that, prompt some discussion. We could warn the action, make the motion, and then, we could have that thought exchange be part of the discussion, I think is a reasonable way to do it.
Okay. So Bill, you can take care of making that thought exchange happen?
Oh yeah. We talked about that at the governance subcommittee meeting Thursday. I've got the question in my notebook.
Okay. So we'll get that via an email prompt.
We'll get it to you ahead of time so you can get some thoughts down and we can capture.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. And I know there's a lot of work that went into all that. I appreciate all the time and energy the three of you put into it to make the recommendation and bring it forward. Thank you. Moving on, we have old business, COVID update, Bill.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot for you on COVID update. I sent a letter yesterday to the community, kind of explaining how we're getting back to general operations is probably the best way to say it. I don't like to use a certain word that people are using about going back to a certain time. Our biggest issue right now that we have with getting back to the way we were running pre-COVID is not necessarily the COVID piece, but is our staffing. And we've had people ask us, when are you going to do X, when are you going to do Y? And we learned some things through the pandemic. One of the things we learned is that we need to cutting down our student transitions actually helps our behavior. So if we can stop, an example is in some of our schools, the teachers move, the kids don't. And that's helped with student behaviors. So we learned some things out of this opportunity. We learned some things about giving kids some of their own space in a different way than what they had before. We thought cubbies were a good thing and lockers were a good things, and having it a different way helps kids. So we're trying to take some of that learning. The other piece is an example that, as I said in my letter, that having, at SATEC, for example, we used to have early drop-off in the morning. I think it was 7:30 or 7:45, and we don't have the staff to staff that right now. I know that I'm looking at Kelsey, but I've talked to all the principals about certain things, and I think like Kelsey's slowly opening up the gym and cafetorium at Fairfield, but doing it slowly because there's kids that haven't had the experience of being together eating a meal in more than their classroom. So we're trying to be thoughtful about it. We ask for patience and as we do this, but also realizing we're having to play with some staffing configurations because we changed our staffing to meet the COVID needs. So we're working that back. We still are getting a few cases every day. We're keeping the letter updated on each school's announcements website. So if you want to see what's happening, Aaron, I know, has a chart of all that daily. He helps me with that. But things have gone down quite a bit. We have had some challenges in staffing the past week, I will say that. So we've had some uptick of cases in our staff, not kids so much. So that's about it for COVID right now. I hope I don't have to do a lot of recording. I hope it even gets quieter as the weeks go on. So I'll take any questions now that.
Okay, any questions for Bill?
I have a question. How are we dealing with like students who are being compromised, or like the kids who like under 5? What is the other protections for these kids?
So the kids that are under 5, we don't have a different masking requirement at the pre-K level.
Okay.
And if there are kids that have a health need, we're working with them. If we have a parent or the student that comes to us and says, I have X, we support them with it. And I know I've had people tell me how they've done that. What we've been told by the health department, their best protection is the mask. You actually have the best mask on right now, right? Or John does, or Aaron with the KN95s. So I couldn't find one quickly as I was running here. I was like, I'll just throw on this mask. But it's also masking by choice, and we're trying to respect that. And same for the staff too, that have immune, and we have staff members that's a concern of theirs, but they're working through it.
Thank you.
I have a
And
quick question, Nilda.
go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, you mentioned that, we had some learning throughout the pandemic, and we're sort of switching over to some, making some of those practices permanent, it sounds like. is there a consolidated list somewhere, something comprehensive that if people wanted to see, you know, like what all of the improvements are that were, you know, or the learnings? Is there a place someone could go and find that?
No, there isn't, Grant. We haven't made one of those. I think we're still trying to figure out which ones are the ones we want to keep and which ones are the ones we don't. And that's, I think, going to be into summertime discussions with the leadership team to say, what are we keeping, what we're not keeping, and how fast do we want to change. And right now, I'm trying to give the schools the grace to say, we don't need to change everything real fast this spring. I'd rather think about that for next year.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have a couple of friends that are teachers in the school, and I know that some of them are wearing masks in solidarity with a few of the kids that you know, their parents are making them wear a mask and stuff just so they don't feel uncomfortable. And I think that's great to have the teachers model that. Any other questions related to COVID update? My editorial comment is that we just have to keep our eyes wide open and recognize that there might be a time where we need to wear masks again for a period of time, and that we just need to be able to kind of roll with this, because I think, you know, this is kind of what we're going to have to do, sort of that cyclical approach. And that's my totally non-scientific perspective. Next item on the agenda is implicit bias and anti-racism training. The first thing I wanted to report is that Ryer and Bill and I did a virtual workshop that was sponsored by the BSA, BSBA, called Supporting Equity on March 3rd, the day after we had our meeting. And it was supported by a group called the Insight Group. And I think their plan is to have more of these. And I thought it was good. Ryer and Bill, you can certainly comment. I think one of the sort of things that I took away from it was, you know, everybody is kind of in the same boat trying to figure all this out. It's not like anybody's got this done perfect and we've got a model school or a model district to follow. I think everybody's kind of working through the ups and downs of the process, and, you know, trying to do the best they can, engaging the communities that they have in their districts. I don't know, Ryer, if you have any comments, or Bill?
I appreciated it. I found it very interesting. They talked a lot about the equity detours, which I found to be super like interesting and helpful in how we kind of approach these issues. And just shortly, those were they're just ways in which sometimes our movement for equity gets derailed and detoured and doesn't reach its full potential. But other than that, I felt it was better than like 90% of the things I sit through, the videos I sit through. So, or, you know, workshops I sit through.
I'd forgotten about that, but you bring up a good point. That equity detour thing was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. What are all the things that get in the way from doing the work? And sometimes we have all this other work to do, you know? And I thought that one was sort of a good one. Like, we're so busy trying to get this done. How can we do that too? Or our plate's too full or whatever. And if you look at everything that way, I mean, that stuff is never going away, right? We're always going to have those issues. It's sort of trying to make it be part of the work instead of making it be a separate piece of the work. That was sort of another concept that kind of resonated with me a little bit, you know, like, don't make this equity thing be this other job that you're doing, incorporate it in all the jobs that you do. Bill, any comments that you want to add?
No, I look forward to them to doing more, and I'd like to get a little, and I gave this back to Chelsea Myers, she's the liaison for the 3 groups that's working with the Insight Group. I said, I know I'm chomping at the bit too early, and I need to be patient, but I'd like to get to something a little bit more concrete. It was great to have the equity detours, but it's also like, so give me some examples about how this works in a district so we can start to get to some action. So And she did email me back because she knows me quite well. She said, Bill, patience. I told you that before with other things, so we'll get there.
Okay. And then you were a little bit garbled, but I think you did say something about maybe community forums in the future.
Yeah, I have been working with a group that gave us a proposal. I'm meeting with them on Friday, getting back onto the community forum piece. But I think I also want to talk with the goals committee to see, like, I don't want to have too many community forums, and it's not that one's more important than the other. I just want to make sure we have this discussion. And so we can talk about that. And I have some information on that as well.
Okay, moving on to the next item, setting goals. So first I need to apologize to Peter because he had emailed me and I told him I wasn't prepared to respond, and clearly I never responded, and I apologize for that. But Peter had agreed to work with Grant and Ryer and Susan Cassidy and Joanna, and he was asking, you know, what's the goal of the setting goals meetings and what was the charge. And Bill and I kind of talked it through a little bit, and I just wanted to sort of read you a preliminary thought, is to establish a process whereas representation from a wide variety of stakeholders are involved in recommending a set of goals to the board for this organization. So this would be MRUSD goals. And the stakeholders should include, but are not limited to, student, staff, parents, leadership team, and board members. So the first charge would be to come up with the process. What's the process of how we're going to do this? Like, how are we going to get information to put the process together? And so I hope that those folks that were still interested, are still interested, and that helps give a little clarity. I understand that I think there was a doodle poll or whatever they're called. And I think you guys had a tentative meeting set up for March 28th from 6 to 7 to come up with a process. And I don't think the process is going to be that labor intensive to come up with the process. Actually, processing it will take more time, but to develop that process, I think you guys can probably get that done in one meeting or so. Does that help clarify things a little bit for those that were asking and those that needed to know? If anyone else wants to participate on that committee, I think they could probably take on another person or two.
Yeah, we'll post it on the board website as a special meeting, Nilda, and people will see the date and time. And I just need to say to folks if they want to work, and we'll do this through email if you want to work together, and I'll come here to central office to this room, or you want to do virtual. It's either way.
Perfect.
You know, some clarity again. I was under the impression that we were going to be talking about students, about the sort of education that we were going to be looking to give the children, but we're looking for results. In other words, we're going to ask the community, what do your kids expect to walk out? What do you expect your kids to walk out of school with? In fact, we did this reading where it was I didn't realize that we were gathering information from the community to conduct the board, to see what you wanted the board to do. I thought this was kid directed, and it seems to be more board directed. That being said, I'd like to resign the committee.
Right. I think this is where we kind of hit that confusion every once in a while where what goals are we talking about? I think we need to get organizational goals, and then the board goals will flow from that. I think there's sort of an evolutionary process, and Bill, you can help me if you want.
I actually think Peter's on the right wavelength of what we're
Then I resign.
Because I hope the organizational goals are about what we want to see for the kids.
Okay.
I hope, that's my bias. But you need to develop a process that engages a broad, in my bias point of view, in that one good reading I gave you, is to engage a wide stakeholder group, to ask the question you just did, to say, how does that inform the goals for the organization?
Perfect.
And it may be some of what we want to see in kids, and it may be some on how you want the work done in the organization to support the kids in that growth.
Okay.
And would it also include what the community is looking for from us in terms
So,
of communication? And...
That's a board, then now you're into board goals.
Right.
Okay. All right, still trying to separate the two.
That's all right, it's a little confusing, like, if you want how the board's gonna do work, that's board goals. But then the organization, for me, as your superintendent, it's really important for me to have, like, what are the goals for the organization? So we can adjust the plan and work of the organization to meet those goals.
So I talked to Bill a little bit about this because I struggle with that distinction between organizational goals and board goals myself. And one of the examples that I have that I keep telling myself is an organizational goal would be that we want to improve academics for all the schools, right? But a board goal could be that we want to engage the community 3 times a year in forums to discuss what all's going on. So the organizational goal is a little more global, whereas the other goal is more concrete. Bill can manage making the organizational goal happen. We have to be more direct in making the board goals happen, which is we want to have, I've just made that up 3 times a year, but let's say that is our goal. We want to make sure we do that, and we can measure ourselves against that, just like Bill can help come up with metrics that can measure whether or not we're meeting our organizational goals once we establish them.
So can I ask, the last meeting, I said I was a little confused about the difference, and someone gave me a really good answer, and I wrote it down, but not in this notebook that I have with me tonight. And I think it was either Grant or Joanna.
It was Grant and Joanna?
I think, but I'm not sure.
Well, Grant was describing that sort of flowing process of how you get from point A to point B, right? In that discussion, as I recall.
Joe, do you remember anything about that from?
Sorry about that. I mean, I think that what Bill just said and what Nilda just said is right. It's just the organizational goals are how we are the portrait of the graduate, right? How are we supporting the schools to educate our children? And then the board goals are how are we doing our job, you know? And how are we it's almost our accountability in doing our job. So it's how are we communicating, how are we operating, how are we collaborating, facilitating, how are we doing what we are supposed to do?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we'll see where we end up after that March 28th meeting.
Yeah. Can I propose a little bit of scope creep for that March 28th meeting?
Sure.
And that would be the group that's meeting actually set up 2 committees. One, or provide the framework for 2 committees, for the selection of 2 committees. One committee to do organizational goals, and one committee composed primarily of board members to do board goals. And that might help keep things separate if we had them operating separately.
I love that idea.
That's not a bad idea to me. Bill, we can make that happen, right? In some way.
Subcommittee meeting, how they want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's up to this team to come up with that process. So you're part of that, so make it so. Go forth okay. And make it happen. All right, we're up to new business. Superintendent recommendation for Franklin Central School principal. This is going to be an action item, and I think we're going to get some preliminary information. Then we're going to have to go into executive session, and then we'll come out of executive session and take action. So Bill, Casey, I don't know who's doing the presentation.
To Casey, I just want to publicly thank Casey Provost for leading the search for the Fairfield Center School. He did a terrific job in putting the process together and including many stakeholders. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to take away I probably took too much of your thunder away, Casey. But I would like Casey to talk about the process, and I just want to say this for the rest of the board members. We're going to talk about the process in public session, and then as it's warned on here for an executive session to talk about the candidates, we'll go into executive session. And those of us that are here for board members and myself will go to the other conference room, and we'll make a breakout room for that to happen and then be able to come back. So, perfect. Casey, thank you.
You're muted, Casey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. I had headphones, I had no microphone with them. Thankfully, the process went better than my microphone is working today. So unfortunately, the process took a little bit longer than we would have liked to, but it still was a pleasure to facilitate. So we started with opportunities for staff and then for community and parents and guardians to give input on what are the skills and knowledge that we need from the next principal and what are the attributes or characteristics and traits. So starting with those forums, then we created an interview committee that had representation from parents, classroom teachers, school counselor, outdoor classroom teacher. And we ended up holding 6 interviews. We had really a strong pool of candidates who applied for the position. So we held interviews, and then our committee identified 2 finalists following our day of interviews. Then we did reference checks. This is the part where we had to pause for the February break and then reconvene after. So we welcomed 2 finalists to visit the school. It was a pretty busy afternoon. We had, right when we got back from school, classroom teachers held similar conversations with students about what they felt like they needed out of the next principal. And then each classroom identified each grade level identified 1 or 2 representatives to serve on a student interview panel. And they also brought questions that were important to them to that. So on the day that the finalists visited, we had a student-led tour, and then we had what I think was the highlight of the process was the student interviews, where they asked their question and then they were able to give feedback after. We also, the finalists met with the central office administrators for an interviewed with Bill, and then that after school that day, there were staff forums happening concurrently where staff could ask questions and provide written feedback. And then we also welcomed the community members to join for forums, similarly to ask questions and give written feedback. And then we took all of that feedback and debriefed, analyzed it, and handed it over to Bill and John. And that was the bulk of the process.
And from looking at all that feedback and the work that the folks that interviewed, I'm recommending to the board that Kelsey Malbuch, hopefully I said that correct, Kelsey, no, I stumbled over, I'm sorry if I did, be the principal for Fairfield Center School starting on July 1st, 2022. And that's my recommendation to the board.
Thank you. So in order to have more discussion, we should now go into executive session. Is that correct?
Yes.
So describe to me the process that we're going to follow again.
So we'll go into executive session. Usually you elect to have at least the superintendent, but I'd ask that Casey be part of it because he was through the process the whole way. And he can talk to you more about any detailed questions. And then at some point, if you'd like Kelsey to join us, she can. And you can talk with her. And I know that in the past, sometimes that's happened and sometimes that hasn't. And it's really up to the pleasure of the board. But I always give the board the chance to have a discussion prior to the candidate coming in.
So those of us that are remote are going to get instructions to go to a breakout room?
Yes.
Okay.
And those of us that are here are going to go to the other conference.
I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Since it's a personnel matter, we don't need any findings. So let's just take a roll vote here. Al,
Yay.
Joanna,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
Ryer,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Branch,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Nilda, yes. Okay, we're gonna move into executive session. We are back from executive session. I think everyone's here. And did someone bring back Kelsey?
Okay, you ready for the camera to be on?
Oh, she's in here. Okay, yeah, I see her hand. I can't see her whole thing, but I see her laptop and she's waving. Okay, so we're ready to take some action on this item. So I would like someone to make a motion that the school board accept the recommendation of the superintendent to hire Kelsey Malba as the Franklin Central School principal.
So moved. Or I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a roll vote. Al? Al, yes? Joanna said yes verbally before, but we don't need her to make the motion go. Nina?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Nilda, yes. Motion carries. Congratulations, Katie Malba, you are the principal of Franklin Central School.
Thank you.
Did I say Franklin?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm in Franklin County, but I don't know where I am most of the time, I guess. Okay, so Jack, if you have to leave, I understand.
Thank
for
you.
staying.
Good night, folks.
I appreciate it.
See ya.
We still have a quorum, so we're good. Next item on the agenda is administrator salary, and we're going to table that. We're not ready to discuss that yet.
You need a
we'll
motion.
move that to a future agenda. I'm not even sure if it's going to be the next meeting or the one after that. As far as board governance recommendation, I think we sort of have a plan for that. We got our recommendation. We're not going to take action tonight. We're going to do the thought exchange and a few beef up on our information, and we'll take action at next meeting. And so we're up to 9D, which is in-person meeting discussion. So you brought it up, Peter, so let's hear your pitch.
Well, I just think that it's time we're moving ahead with the thing, and we could still, obviously, I'm back in school now, and we tell the kids that a mask is optional, and it would seem to me common sense that we model what we say, and therefore we meet in a room and masks are optional. And it just, to me, that makes sense that good leaders do what they say. They lead by example, and I think that's what we should do.
Okay. Anyone else have any commentary?
I'll say that I agree. I think it's really hard to have a hybrid meeting like this. It's one thing to, I mean, I certainly think we should still do Zoom, obviously, and still allow people to participate because I think that's great, but it's very hard to like have a discussion when like someone is on the screen raising their hand, or I'm like in the room raising my hand and like having to like interrupt people or not being able to read when someone across the table is ready to say something. So I do think it is an important aspect, and all of the kids, all of our teachers, all of our staff, everyone is in school every day, and like Peter said, we should be leading by example. So I would 100% say that it's time, now, it's time.
I also agree with that, Ryer and Peter. It's weird to say. My father, I don't know where we go with this. But I definitely think, you know, the kids deserve to see us here, the adults, the parents. I've heard from outside people say, well, wait a minute, if you expect our kids to be there, why shouldn't you? So, you know, I understand there's definitely circumstances where people can't make it and Zoom does work. I think overall, I think we should all be back.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree, but I'll provide the counter argument. You know, the if it's safe in this situation, why isn't it safe in that situation is a logical fallacy. So there's that. Moving past that, I would also wonder if the administrators, especially, feel that it's in the best interest of the district to have in-person meetings that are unnecessary at this point. That was a big consideration when we decided to go to virtual, was, you know, why do it if you don't have to? Maybe we're past that, maybe we're not, but I'd like to know how, especially, you know, the administrators feel about that. If it makes sense to have people in the buildings when it hasn't previously.
So I'll answer Grant, but I would also let any of my colleagues, sorry, excuse me. I've talked too much tonight, you can tell. I have heard from my colleagues on the leadership team asking why the board isn't in person, and they're hearing that in their buildings.
So I think that goes a long ways towards you know, supporting the idea of reconvening in person. You know, if that's no longer seen as valuable to have us remote, then I'm all for in person personally.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I would agree with what Ryer, Peter, Katie, Grant, all have said so far. And maybe I missed one.
Okay. Anybody that hasn't spoken up, have any comment?
I do. While I agree, yes, we should be, but I like to still have the option of work remotely. I've got a new position, and while I take my, you know, my position on the board seriously, I like the flexibility. I couldn't make it tonight because I am have meetings right up till almost 6 o'clock, and I don't want to feel like I'm hurrying out the door. So I still like the flexibility, and I will be in person when I can. But you know, it's our own time and trying to manage, and being that flexibility, I really do still need that. So, and I've appreciated this. So, you know, if that's still an option to keep it open, I would still appreciate that.
Thanks, Dina. Anyone else?
And I'm probably going to be remote for the rest of the year, so I don't.
Thanks, Al. Yeah. I mean, I think we've certainly evolved even over the last couple of months, right? Because we had this discussion a couple of months ago, and I don't think we were quite ready. But just the fact that I'm looking at what 6 or 7 of you in the room, and not all of you have masks on, shows that the comfort level has changed. I think, as I said earlier, you know, I listened to this whole discussion on BPR recently, and there was a physician from UVM Medical Center who was talking about how we have to just be prepared, because surges are going to come, and we just have to be on the ready to be able to, you know, pull it back if we need to and go for it if we don't. I haven't had a lot of difficulty running these meetings. I have to say tonight was a little different because do we have any public in the room there right now? No. I think it was a little difficult to not be able to sort of feel the compassion of the Casavant family from where I was. And, you know, I appreciate when someone asked to take a break. I was like, duh, why are we doing that? And then I sort of understood that we were probably trying to give just everybody a chance to kind of collect themselves and either exit or not. And I understand that. And that was probably the awkward part for me tonight. But usually I don't have a big problem with it, but I'm looking forward to it. And we can probably start with our first meeting in April, right?
I'll be honest, when they spoke, the feeling that I got watching them, I agree with you. I don't think you guys truly got the full picture, because the way she spoke and the way her father was very powerful, and I think it probably wasn't portrayed to you guys. And I think that's gonna change how we view the rest of that situation, because we got to see it. So
I appreciate that. I did change my view to speaker view when they were speaking, and whoever was manning the camera did a really good job of trying to capture their faces, which was very helpful. And I've been doing that most recently, especially when I'm trying to get you guys in the room. If I hit speaker view, I get you 6 or 7 of you in there, which helps me a lot. But yeah, there are certain things that it's just hard to capture not being face to face, and also being able to control I don't want to say control the conversation, but chair the meeting appropriately. There's a lot. It's hard to do it in dual format. I think the remote meetings work the best when they're 100% remote, to be honest. And even at the hospital, we do a blend, and so we're starting to do more of the in-person stuff, and people are complaining that we either need to do in-person or remote. This half and half thing is just hard to manage. So anyway, let's start with I'm getting the feeling we want to start going in person. So we start in April, we take it from there and see how it plays out.
Nilda, could I also add that obviously if someone wants to stay remote, they stay remote. And I'm also thinking about the administrators who, listening to Bill cry about how tired they are, possibly they might also be excused to stay remote also. The principals and those people who maybe don't need to be here face to face unless they feel the need to. Let's just say that it's always optional. Right.
I mean, I think I'd like to support what Nina said. It's kind of on our own. There might be situations in our lives, whatever they are, that might require you to be remote one night. And, we just have to kind of roll with that and try to make it work the best we can. And, we can do that well.
And I think we have done a pretty good job. And I agree. Sometimes you can't get the feeling in the room, but that subject is very powerful to me anyway, but and I do see the advantage of being in person. I really do, but I need the flexibility as well. That's just the way that kind of my life is, or everybody's life too. It's not just me, but it's busy.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I think that we just have to trust one another to know that if somebody's making a choice to stay home, they have a reason for it. And it's not necessarily a reason that has to be shared with everyone. Thank you for bringing that up, Peter. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to other business. We have the warrants. I'd like a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as an authorization and signature of any individual board member participating remotely.
So moved.
Okay, Al, is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Grant. Any discussion about the warrants? All right, so Al, vote.
Okay.
Joanna's not here. Nina?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Ryer?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jack's not here. Nilda, yes. Okay, so motion carries. The warrants are approved. Next item on the agenda is superintendent's report.
I'm going to be really quick, seeing the hour we're at. Just wanted to say right now, the last day of school is June 16th, Thursday, June 16th. Graduation is set for Saturday, where did I put this? The 11th. One of the things, we had a great new member orientation with Ryer, Nita, and Nilda, and one of the things I learned, thanks to Aaron, is that there's a new version of the Essentials book, and it has quite a bit of an upgrade. So I don't need any action from the board, but I'm going to get all of you not only an electronic copy, but a paper copy of the new Essentials book. There's a couple new chapters in there, and there's some stuff to support the goals work. Okay. So I think they'll be really helpful. Next month, On the first, we did an SEL survey with students from grades 3 through 12 in the district last November, December. I'm looking at my colleagues. Am I in the right area at least?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's taken us a while because it's our new data system, but we have the results. So I want to bring that next meeting to you for you to see. And what I'm struggling with, because I'm the one producing the report right now, is I could make it like 50 pages, which is too much. But at the same time, I want to be transparent about it and have you say, so it may be a 2-time report. You say, hey, I got this, but what else do you want to see? Okay? So we'll be bringing that to the board, and we're going to look at that as a leadership team. That's it. That's really short and quick.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Next item is board announcements. Any board members have announcements to make?
I do. Whoops, sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
My question is, on my calendar, I have 2 different dates for setting goals. We don't have a meeting on the 22nd, do we?
No.
Okay, that can be written.
Okay, Nina, announcement?
No, yeah, Nilda, you kind of alluded to the comments. I wanted to congratulate the Comet hockey team for winning states. It was pretty awesome. And also 2 spring sports start on Monday for BFA.
Wow, thank you.
Oh, and one other thing, I don't know, there's there's a play on Friday night for anybody,
Oh, that's
right?
what I meant to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a play on Friday night at BFA.
No, it's the one at Clay. I forgot the title, and I should know. And they are going to a regional competition on Saturday. So, but they are doing it Friday at BFA.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. I actually had it written here with Clay. And then
I really didn't even read it, I swear. My nephew's in it, that's the only reason I know.
So, and I should say, speaking of, there were, speaking of students, 3 students, I think, that ran at the national event in New York City recently. Ethan Mashtier, Logan Hughes, and maybe there's just 2 from BFA.
2 from BFA, 1 from MBA.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Thank you. Any agenda items for future meetings that?
I think one of the students brought up the that article, the analysis of the culture of bigotry at BFA, and that was something I'd asked about as well earlier because I'd read it. That's something that I think is really concerning, and it was like they did this out of 42 respondents, 22 said there was a increase in bigotry since they started attending BFA. I think that's really concerning, and I know it's not something necessarily we can attack on our own, but I think it's something that warrants a little bit of a discussion. And I don't know, and obviously there's other concerns at BFA too, so I just don't know if we can have a discussion about that. I know that kind of falls in line with the anti-racism, anti-bias stuff, but I think it's worthy of discussing.
Is that something that the board would like to get some information on?
I would.
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of nods.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So Bill, can we get that on a future agenda? Not necessarily next meeting, but just have that on the list, the bigotry study or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah, I mean, what I can get you is, and Briar, help me with this because you and I had a few discussions on this. It's a Mercury article, and the Mercury ran a survey.
So they said they did a.
And I heard the kids say tonight there was 40. I think there were 42 respondents.
Yeah, they had 42 respondents. 22 said they felt there was either a slight or great increase in bigotry. And yeah, they did an anonymous survey.
Right.
And I just wanted to know what. I mean, they go into in this article. They go into like some of the things which are. I mean, it's across the kind of the spectrum of racism, sexism.
All right. Yeah. So we can. It would be good to give us some context around why they did the survey and if there's a plan for next steps or anything too.
I think it was just part of an article. I mean, I think it was just part of, they were doing an article.
I think Brian, you're right. I think they just did as part of an article, but
You can go onto the Mercury website and pull that up.
Yeah, it's on the Mercury website.
No, but I'll make sure we get it. As we're going to have it. I'll make sure that we have a link to it, or you have a copy of the article.
Okay.
And where are you?
Yeah, I believe I heard from the public comment that there's some desire to review our public comment policy. I'd like to add that to the agenda, specifically a comparison of our policy versus what it says in VSBA, to see what we're doing, if it's exactly aligned or if there's maybe some differences.
That was policy 821, he said, right?
I don't know the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it was our public comment that our policy on public comment that he was referring to.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
since
it was
requested,
821.
yeah,
was
so since that
821.
was requested, I think we should review it.
Okay, we can add that to the future meetings.
And I also
agenda.
just want to be careful of, we can review the article, but, it was only 42 students, but I also think we need to have Brett in the conversation then too. I just want to be careful how, we could go down a rabbit hole with this, and I know it's good to maybe touch upon it, but I don't know. I think we're just going to be going off of, there's 42 people when we should be considering the entire school. That's all, just a comment.
Yeah, good point. Anything else?
Just that, Nilda, I went back into the classroom and I can tell you that the kids are not being shortchanged. The teachers that I'm seeing around me when I go to work, and they're working very, very hard. Kids are learning a lot. I was very, very proud of it. And I'm at State Tech. I substitute there 2 days a week. People are working extremely hard.
Thank you, Peter. We have no need to go into executive session. Is there any more business to come before the board? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 8:47.